All right. So how's everybody doing? Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation in Detroit, host of the Michael Imhotep show. So we're live here tonight. Today is Friday, April 21st, 2017. It's also the 1 year anniversary of the death of the Purple one of my heroes, Prince Rogers Nelson. Tonight we're going to do a live free preview of two of the live online classes that I'm teaching. The first one will deal with ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And the second one we'll do a preview of a class that's starting up tomorrow, Saturday, April 22nd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Okay, so we're broadcasting on Facebook Live also, and we should be broadcasting on YouTube. I'm trying out broadcasting on YouTube as well here with Crowdcast. So you're going to be able to see the a live PowerPoint presentation that I'm doing also. You'll be able to see that as well. We're going to show that to you. And you can share this broadcast on your own Facebook page as well. Those watching on Facebook, on our fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Okay. So hello to everybody. Thanks for tuning in this late as well. Okay. And this is recorded at on Crowdcast. This is recorded also, so you can watch it over and over again. And in the description of the broadcast on Facebook and YouTube, we have the information how to watch this broadcast, and that link allows you to also watch it again as well. Okay. All right. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, the approach that I don't take the approach that looks at it episodically as an episode in history. I look at it differently than a lot of other people. I don't look at it as an episode in history. We have to understand it chronologically. Okay, we have to understand it chronologically, and we have to understand how a sequence of historical events lead up to another larger historical event taking place. Okay, we have to understand how a sequence of historical events leads up to another larger historical event taking place. Okay. All right. So, and this is freezing up on Google Chrome. So hopefully this will straighten out here on Google Chrome. All right. So I'm going to go to the presentation here in just a minute. And some of the things we deal with African people being indigenous to this land that we call the United States of America. We've been here at least 51,700 years. There's overwhelming evidence documenting that also. We didn't first come here August 20th, 1619 on that Dutch warship in Jamestown, Virginia. Yes, that did happen, but we were here tens of thousands of years before that also. We were here tens of thousands of years before that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go to the PowerPoint presentation here in just a minute. I just want to share this information here on Facebook. Those watching on Facebook, you can share this broadcast on your own Facebook page and invite your friends to tune in as well. Those watching on Crowdcast, can you hear me all right? Those watching on Crowdcast, can you hear me all right? Send me a message, let me know that you can hear me. Okay, so I can continue here. And let's go here. Just 1 second. All right. And those on Facebook, how you all doing on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. And I just want to share this. We're going to post the information. Hey, Tori, how you doing? We're going to post the information here on the thread of the of the broadcast. Been a very, very busy day today. And wanted to broadcast earlier in the day, but wasn't able to do that. Okay, here. Let's try to post this here on the thread. All right. All right, let me go ahead and start this. All right, let's turn screen share on so you can see our presentation here. Okay, so ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. All right, so this is about a 1 hour overview of this presentation. This is a 4-week, 8-hour course that I teach, online course. It's live, all of it's recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. So at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it corrects wrong behavior. All right, and we have this, I did a presentation dealing with this topic, January 24, 2014. It's available on DVD at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you want to get that. The online course that I teach is much more intense. We cover a lot more information, all right? Here's just a few of the people I've interviewed over the past 7 years. I'm not sure why we're getting this distortion here on the screen, but everybody from Dr. Leonard Jeffries to Professor Kaba Kamene, Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote one of the texts that we use in the course, Professor James Small, Dr. Frances Cress Wilson, interviewed her 3 times, Tony Browder, Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Ray Hagins, Scheherazade Ali, Dr. Umar Johnson, Professor Manu Pim, talk show host Warren Ballantyne, Kalindi E., who's a historian and African martial artist, grandmaster in African martial arts, Dr. Wayne Chandler, Kofi Johnson, who created the Afro Man and Protectors of the Book of Knowledge series, interviewed a lot of people. You can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have 7 years of podcasted episodes there. We have over 700 episodes you can check out, all right? Now, Dr. John Henrik Clarke is one of our great Grandmaster Scholar warriors. Dr. John Henrik Clarke taught us that all history is a current event. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion. Everything that's ever happened continues to happen in some shape, form, or fashion, okay? And what we do is, because I understand that people are coming with different levels of understanding when it comes to history, I like to lay a historical foundation so everybody can understand that. Because to understand the transatlantic slave trade, you have to understand the history of the Moors and the 800-year occupation in Europe. We deal with thousands of years of history in this course. We deal with ancient Kemet. We deal with Ta-Nehisi or Nubia. We deal with Abyssinia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Songhai, Mali. We deal with a lot of different, we deal with a lot of history, okay, to understand why the transatlantic slave trade happened, to understand what exactly happened in the transatlantic slave trade also, okay? All right, now, a lot of people ask, how do you pronounce your last name, okay? Last name is Imhotep, I-M-H-O-T-E-P, Imhotep, okay? It's pronounced E-M-H-O-T-E-P, very, very easy to understand. Imhotep means he who comes in peace, in the Medu Neter language of the ancient Kemetic people or ancient Kemites, okay? Now, we did not call it Egypt, all right? Now, what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before does not mean it's not true. It just means you just have to do more research to understand what I'm talking about. We did not call the country Egypt or that area Egypt. Egypt is an Arabic word or Greek derivation. Comes from the Medu Neter word Hekupata, which means the land of the temple of Ptah or Ptah. And then the Greeks call it Egyptos. And then the Romans in Latin, they call it Egyptus. And then from Egyptus, you get Egypt, okay, E-G-Y-P-T. And Egypt is what the Arabs called it. We called it Kemet, meaning land of the blacks, or you'll see the name Ta-Meri, which means the beloved land. All right. Now, Imhotep was a high priest. He was a physician, an architect, a mathematician. He was a designer of the step pyramid at Saqqara for Nesubiti Zoser or Pharaoh Zoser of the Third Dynasty. We did not refer to the kings as pharaohs. That was an Asian term in reference to Kemetic kings. Our term would be Nesubiti. This is in the Third Dynasty, and he was known as the world's first multi-genius. Now, he lived around 3000 BC, okay? And because we know at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen, I go with the oldest dates I can find. So you're looking at around 3000 BC, okay? All right, now that's Imhotep. We have a couple of depictions here of Imhotep, a couple of statues, famous statues of him. This is Imhotep. This is not Imhotep, okay? In the 2001 blockbuster movie, The Mummy Returns, the villain's name was Imhotep. Consequently, many of our children think that one of our greatest ancestors and one of the greatest people who ever lived in human history, I think he was not of African descent, okay? But what this does is this also demonizes ancient Egypt and causes many of our people to hate Egypt, okay? We've already been taught to hate Egypt because of oftentimes religious literature. That's a whole nother conversation, okay? But in this movie here, which was the sequel to the movie The Mummy, they have this actor Arnold Vosloo, who is he looks Arab or Eurasian, and in the movie, his name was Imhotep, and he was a high priest from ancient Egypt, and he was a villain. Okay, so we have to understand the number one way that European white supremacist images are fed to our people is through the television. You call it the TV, I call it the television. It's a vision that tells lies, okay? And we have to understand this. All right, let me just switch over here right quick. Okay, shout out to the people here in Crowdcast. We're broadcasting on 3 different platforms. And let me stop the share for just a minute here. I want to make sure that people on Facebook can see also. Okay, so those on Facebook, you were able, I just want to make sure you're able to see the presentation. Okay, so you can see the slideshow presentation as well. All right, so, and very quickly for those just tuning in, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. This is a 1 hour free preview of a 8-hour online course that I do, a live online course that is recorded, and it's called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we have the information, we just posted here on the thread. You can register for the full 8-hour online course, okay? You can register for the full 8-hour online course. And then those watching on Facebook, and we should be broadcasting on YouTube also. Shout out to the people watching us on our YouTube channel, The African History Network, The African History Network on YouTube as well. I'm not sure, let me see. Should be broadcasting on YouTube, I hope so. So we'll see, okay? Because I'm trying this technology out, broadcasting on YouTube at the same time also. All right. Okay, so let's go back to this, let's go back to the presentation here. All right, let me turn screen share on again. Excuse me, I'm dealing with allergies a little bit. Okay, now this is a pyramid. This is the pyramid at Saqqara that Imhotep was the designer of. Okay, this is one of the early pyramids. It's called a mastaba. It's one of the step pyramids. Pyramid technology, pyramid building technology evolves over thousands of years, or over hundreds of years, I should say. Pyramid building technology evolves over hundreds of years. You're going to also see a difference between the pyramids in ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt and the pyramids in Nubia or Ta-Nehisi, okay? Because there are more pyramids, there are over 200 in Nubia or Ta-Nehisi. And Nubia was the mother of ancient Kemet, okay? Nubia was the mother of ancient Kemet. All right, okay, and the grandmother was Ethiopia. All right, now, in the course, we're gonna deal with a lot of dates, okay? And I know people come from different levels of understanding of history. So this is why I deal with this in the beginning, so we can have a firm foundation, all right? You're gonna deal with BC and AD dates, BC and AD dates, okay? And this dating system was basically formulated and popularized by an English monk named the Venerable Bede, B-E-D-E, also later known as Saint Bede, okay, in 8th century AD. So BC dates count down, AD dates count up. AD does not mean after death. AD means Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord. You also see some scholars using the dating system of BCE, which means before the Common Era, and they'll also use ACE, which means after the Common Era. There's an attempt to get away from the dating system based upon Christianity, okay, and based upon quote unquote Jesus the Christ. Okay, there's an attempt to get away from that as well. All right. Okay, now anytime I do a presentation, I know I'm going to say some things people never heard before. May say some things that people don't like. I'll probably say some things people disagree with. I'm not dealing with opinion usually. I'm dealing with facts and evidence. I've been studying African history, culture, spiritual systems, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, and the media for 25 years. So in this course, it's thoroughly documented. We're going to give you numerous sources, articles, video clips, websites, books. It's thoroughly documented. Okay, so usually I have people put their fingers together to form a circle. Learned this from one of my teachers, Dr. Ray Hagens. I modified it to make it my own. I usually say something like this: the space inside the circle represents my realm of knowledge. Everything that I think I know about whatever I think I know is represented within the circumference of this circle. I must keep in mind that there are still things to know that exist outside the circumference of my own awareness. Now, the reason why I say this is because oftentimes when people hear something that contradicts what they think, what they believe, or what they've been taught, they automatically reject it without doing any research to determine the validity of the new information that they're learning. And at the same time, they usually don't use that same level of scrutiny to analyze, critique, or reevaluate what it is they believe or what they think they know. Okay, so just because you know everything that you know about what you know does not mean you know everything there is to know about what you know. There's still things that exist outside the circumference of your own awareness. All right. And then forgive me here because I'm monitoring. We're broadcasting on Facebook Live and should be YouTube. So I'm monitoring like the questions that people have. I'm monitoring that on my smartphones, so I can leave the presentation up here also. Okay, so if you have questions on Facebook and in Crowdcast, you can just post them there. We'll try to get to your questions as well. All right. Okay. So and 3 reasons why I do these presentations. There's a lot of work to put together these presentations, whether I do them online or whether I do physical presentations. And also, if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, you can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can contact me there. You can also email me at info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. How you doing, Donna, in Philadelphia? Okay, watching us on Facebook. Now, first of all, I tell people, you don't have to believe a word that I say. Go do your own research. Proper documentation ends all conversation. You don't have to believe a word that I say. Do these presentations to number one, make you think. If I can make you think, you start asking questions. If you start asking questions, you start seeking out answers. Number 2, to provide you with the information, the history, the resources, the websites, the articles, the video clips, etc., for you to go do your own research. Number 3, to bring about behavior modification. The information that we take in is not so we can try to talk down to people who don't have this information. It's not so we can go on YouTube and disrespect our elders. It's not so we can memorize as many facts as figures as we can and then try to win some prize on a black version of Jeopardy. Okay, is to bring about behavior modification. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. So the information we take in has to ultimately change our behavior so we can change our results for the better. Okay, so our motto is right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. Right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. All right. Okay, now, so here's some of the things that we deal with in the course, and it's an 8-hour course, and actually it's going to be a little more than 8 hours. It'll probably be 9 or 10 hours. We have the next session of the course this coming Thursday, April 27th, 2017. We have information here in the description of the broadcast, how to register for the full course. It's only $40. All of it's recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay. And as soon as you register, you'll be able to watch the first 4 hours of the course that we've already recorded. That way, this Thursday, April 27th, 2017, when the class meets from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll be all caught up and is meeting for the next few Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Some of the things we deal with in the course. We deal with what exactly was the transatlantic slave trade? Why did it happen? Why did it come about? What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting? What role did Christopher Columbus play? Christopher Columbus is crucial. Columbus and his 4 voyages starting August 3rd, 1492, when he set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and Santa Maria, and the lands that Columbus so-called discovered, okay, is crucial because Columbus opened up the so-called New World to other European powers to come in and fight over these new lands, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Panama, etc. Okay, and these European nations coming out of the Dark Ages, searching for gold and silver and spices, etc., and new lands, they are fighting over these new lands to exploit the labor of the people and extract wealth out of the territories, and to send this wealth back to their respective European nations to rebuild these nations. Okay, so we also deal with a crucial period of time from 8th century to 15th century AD, and the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who go into Europe in 711 AD, fight and conquer the Vandals and the Visigoths. They go into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal. That is a crucial piece of history. Without the Moors, you don't have Columbus. Okay, it is a crucial piece of history. We also deal with when did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? Okay, yes, August 20th, 1619 happened, but also a lot of people don't know that the Spanish, who were the second ones involved in the slave trade, because the first ones involved were the Portuguese when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade. Now, we also talk about the Arab slave trade of African people that existed from about the 8th century AD to the 19th century AD, because the Arabs were enslaving African people almost 1,000 years before Europeans got involved in the slave trade. Okay, but the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina in the 1520s. This is almost 100 years before Jamestown, Virginia, 1619. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about. Okay, on Facebook, Brenda Jenkins, how you doing? Texas, so excited I'm a part of this presentation. How you doing, Brenda? Christine Cambridge, how you doing? Ali Jamal Hotep, brother, Mod Hotep, Mashia McClay. Without the Moors, you don't have Columbus. Absolutely, because the Moors are going to reintroduce the concepts of longitude and latitude. Nautical instruments that Columbus is using are based upon Moorish technology that are introduced into Europe. The Moors introduced almanacs, spherical globes, all different types of things like this. Okay, so we get into that in the course, in the full course. This is just a 1 hour preview of the 8 hour plus online course that I do. We also deal with, did Africans sell themselves into slavery? We deal with understanding the involvement of African people in the slave trade, because the way it's presented by people like Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. Gates is an apologist for Europeans. He does do some good work. I cite some of his articles in the course. I've read dozens of his articles. That's how I know what he says. Okay, he does do some good work, but some of the information that he deals with the transatlantic slave trade and the African involvement is wrong, because his goal is to absolve Europeans of any responsibility when it comes to paying reparations. This is why he's backed by corporations like Bank of America, things like this. Okay, so we deal with, did Africans sell themselves into slavery? We also deal with the African presence in this country called the United States of America, going back over 50,000 years ago, because this was our land taken away from us. So yes, the transatlantic slave trade happened, but we also deal with thousands of years of history before it happened in this country. Okay, so these are just some of a few of the things we deal with in the course, and a lot more. Now, this is Runoko Rashidi. I've interviewed Runoko 6 times. All those shows are podcasted. You can go back and listen. I have a documented body of work. You can go back and listen to it. Over 700 podcasted episodes. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you can just click on the homepage, listen to podcasts in the Michael Imhotep Show, and you can listen to the podcast. Okay, so this is why studying African history is so important. Okay, and on Facebook, Leslie said, "What is the cost to register for the course, and how do I register?" Okay, we have the link there. Leslie, we'll post this. We'll post this again here. Just 1 second here. How's everybody doing on Crowdcast? All right. So we're broadcasting on Crowdcast, and we're broadcasting on Facebook Live as well, Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook. Okay. So you can post your comments, questions here on Facebook, and we'll get to those as well. Let me post this information here, right here. Give me a minute here. Copy and paste this. All right, so Leslie, here you go. All right, we just posted it. So those who want to register for this full 8-hour plus course, this is more than 8 hours. It's more than 8 hours. We just posted a link there. It says register here on Facebook. We just posted a link there. Click on that link. You can register there. As soon as you register, you will be able to watch the first 4 hours of the course that I recorded the past 2 weeks. And that stuff's going to blow you away. So then when class takes place this Thursday, April 27th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll be all ready and you'll have some questions to ask us, ask me as well. Okay. All right. So let's go back to this here. Let's turn the screen share back on. All right. If a screensaver of Beyonce or Halle Berry pops up, it's just a screensaver. Don't be afraid, okay? All right. Okay, so Renoko is a world traveler. He's been to about 110 islands and countries around the world last time I checked. And he's an author as well. He's in Hidden Colors 2, The Triumph of Melanin, and we have all the Hidden Colors documentaries available at our website. We have DVDs. All 30 of my DVD lectures are at our website, also AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. But Renoko has a saying that I've modified and made my own. If you listen to my radio show, if you listen to any of my presentations, you hear me say this. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you have been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself, okay? So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. This is why studying African history and culture is so important. And they are connected. The history and culture are connected, okay? All right, now here is Marcus Mosiah Garvey, founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914 in Jamaica. And he comes to the U.S. in 1916, a year after Booker T. Washington passed. And they had been communicating with one another by letter, and they were supposed to work together when Marcus Garvey got here. But Booker T. Washington died the year before Garvey got here, because Garvey read Up From Slavery, the book that Booker T. Washington wrote, and he admired Booker T. Washington's do for self attitude and economic empowerment agenda. Okay, but Marcus Garvey said if the Negro is not careful, he will drink in all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. If the Negro is not careful, he will drink in all the poison of modern civilization and die from the effects of it. And people like Lil Wayne and Rick Ross and a lot of these hip hop artists, Nicki Minaj, who are putting out negative hip hop. They may be nice people when you meet them one-on-one, but the persona that is created by their record labels, etc., is poison. And our youth are drinking in this poison and dying from the effects of it. Okay, now Dr. Wade Nobles, who's one of our great African Center psychologists, I just saw him here in Detroit at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, February 25th, 2017. It was Dr. Wade Nobles and two of my teachers, Professor James Small and Dr. Leonard Jeffries. They were speaking here in Detroit at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Dr. Wade Nobles taught us about what power is. And he said power is the ability to define and shape reality and to have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. Power coming from the Latin word potere, meaning to be able. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. And this is why having control of our own media is so important. You know, I've been studying media for 25 years. I do radio here in Detroit on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF. I do national radio as well. Guest hosted for Roland Martin on his radio show dozens of times. I guest hosted for Warren Ballantyne for about a 3-month stretch back in 2014. So I understand the power of media. And my degrees in business administration with a major in marketing. Okay, major in marketing, foundation of marketing and psychology. So I definitely understand the power of the media as well as the propaganda of the media. Now, Dr. Francis Cress Wells and Nellie Fuller, they taught us to understand white supremacy and racism as a global system. And they taught us that if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. Everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. And in the course, in the full course, we deal with understanding racism from a historical perspective, not from a Merriam-Webster perspective, from a historical perspective. Because unfortunately, what happens is that on I watch MSNBC, you know, about 6 to 10 hours a day. People that listen to my show know this. I do research all day long. But when you see debates, panel discussions on CNN, MSNBC, God forbid, Fox News. They're just totally clueless. Fox News. They have a white supremacist agenda on Fox News. But when you see discussions about racism, right, usually they never define from a historical perspective what racism is. So people are just left to their own interpretation of racism, which is usually wrong. Okay, so racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the ideology of white supremacy. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the ideology of white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, etc. And it uses to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. Okay, if you don't understand what racism is, how can you fight it? You know, Muhammad Ali was one of my heroes. You see the pictures of Ali behind me. Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X, two of my heroes, right? Muhammad Ali said, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. How can you fight what you can't see and don't understand? How can you fight what you can't see and don't understand? So Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, who's in the Hidden Colors documentaries, Professor Kaba, he's one of my teachers. I've interviewed him dozens of times. You can go back and listen to the podcast of the interviews I've done with Professor Kaba at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And one of the things Professor Kaba taught me is that to understand the history of something, you first have to understand the existence of something. You first have to understand the pre-existence of existence. To understand the existence of something, you first have to understand the pre-existence of existence. So this is why when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we deal with it chronologically and we deal with thousands of years of history before it takes place. But as Dr. Francis Cress Welsing taught us, we have to understand white supremacy and racism as it manifests itself throughout the 9 areas of human activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And this is for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival on a planet that's less than 10% European. So we deal with this in depth in the full course, okay? So so many of our people, so many of our civil rights leaders, things like this, don't understand white supremacy and racism from that perspective. Okay, and here's Dr. Wilson. This is the famous book she wrote, The ISIS Papers, The Keys to the Colors. Okay, now Malcolm's one of my heroes, as you see in the painting of the print of Malcolm in the back. I created this meme and put this on Facebook. Okay, because I've been studying media for 25 years, and oftentimes I hear people say things like TV shows like Empire are just entertainment. When you have a proliferation of slave movies, which we deal with here in the course, because I deal with the problem with the slave movies. Because in the year 2013 was known as the year of the slave movies. You had 7 slave-themed movies in 2013. There's a reason why we keep having all these slave movies. Now you have a slave television show called Underground. And I understand they mean well. It's about the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman, things like this. There's a reason why there's such a proliferation of slave movies and you have a slave television show. It's designed to keep you in a slave mentality. It's designed to perpetuate the 1619 myth. This is understanding the propaganda of the media and how the media is one of the most powerful weapons that Europeans have and are using against us, but it can also be a powerful weapon once we understand this and reclaim our history and culture and use our own media to empower ourselves. So I put together this meme and it says, and you thought the media was just entertainment. Never underestimate the power of the television. You call it a TV, I call it a television. Why? Because in 2011, Nielsen Media, okay, that conduct the AC Nielsen ratings, the TV ratings that determine how much a TV station or a TV network charges to advertise on their various shows is based upon the share of the market that a particular show has. In 2011, Nielsen conducted a study, and they found that African Americans 18 to 49 years old watch 7.2 hours of television a day. 7.2 hours of television a day. That's 50 hours a week. That's a full-time job plus 10 hours of overtime you don't get paid to do. And then African American children 13 to about 17 years old, they watch 5 hours and 54 minutes a day of television. That's 42 hours a week. Okay. Now, Malcolm said the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the innocent guilty. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power because they control the minds of the masses. You don't have to look any further than Trayvon Martin, because Fox News demonized Trayvon Martin and made Trayvon Martin look like the aggressor and the perpetrator, and made George Zimmerman look like the victim who was just defending himself from this demon who was trying to attack and kill him. Okay, the media is extremely, extremely important. All right, so Malcolm asks us, in this clip here, Malcolm asks a series of questions, and we answer a lot of this in the course, right? Of who are you? Malcolm asked a question. He says, who are you? Don't tell me Negro. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What language did you speak? What was yours? What land was yours? He said, what was your name? Don't tell me Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. We didn't have those type of names where we came from. He said, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Who took it? Where did it go? Where's your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What method did the man use to wipe out your history? What happened to you to make you as dumb as you are right now? So these are questions that we answer in the course. Now, and then we deal with Kathleen Cleaver also, because in the late 60s, early 70s, Kathleen Cleaver talked about why they were wearing the Afro hairstyles. And she talked about a new sense of awareness in African people loving themselves and loving their African features. And she talked about for hundreds of years, African-American women were taught to straighten their hair and lighten their skin to look like white women because they were trying to acquiesce or achieve a European standard of beauty. And African-American men, because we're both indoctrinated with white supremacy, and we're both trying to recover, we're both going through a 12-step recovery process, recovering from the effects of white supremacy and racism. African-American men were taught to hold African-American women to a European standard of beauty as well. Okay? So we have to understand the psychological brainwashing that's taking place in our people. I also deal with a historical example of the suppression of the knowledge, because we have to understand the reason why our history and culture was taken away from us was because it was so powerful. If it wasn't powerful, it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have to brainwash us and take it away from us and impose Christianity on us if what we had was not so powerful. But they understood how powerful it was. And they had understood that the lie and the truth cannot coexist in the same space. So the truth has to be distorted and hidden and destroyed for the lie to take place and to flourish. And a good example of that is the fight between the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Christians, in 432 AD, when Pope Celestine I sends a British slave named Patrick into Ireland to spread Christianity and to fight against the Druids, who were dealing with a watered down version of teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, coming out of the mystery schools in ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. And Druid in Old Irish means he who knows, because they were dealing with something called the gnosis, which was the true knowledge. But they're dealing with a watered down version of teachings coming out of ancient Kemet. So we deal with this historical example of the suppression of the knowledge. Okay. All right. Now, this is Dr. David Imhotep. And this is what we'll do. I'll go to some questions here on Facebook here quickly. And watching 52 hours of television a week. Absolutely. That was in 2011. I think he's gotten worse since then. Dino. Okay. All right. Let me back up a little. Okay. Angela Woods. Hey, Angela, how you doing? Let's go to some questions here on Facebook. Mashia McClay said, met the master teacher, Dr. Kaba, when he came to Nashville last year. That's my man, Professor Kaba. Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. I've known him since 2010. I've interviewed him dozens of times. Dino Hall said, how can we fight what you can't not see or understand? Exactly. Okay. Fox is only good for football season. Vernon Thomas said, real talk. Scott said, tele-eyes visually. Yeah, the television. Now, there's some good shows on TV. News One Now with Roland Martin. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I watch MSNBC also. You have shows like the Shark Tank. You have on CNBC, you have The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis. You can learn a lot about business watching The Prophet on CNBC and on ABC watching the Shark Tank. My degree's in business administration. Those are some good shows. Seriously. You do have some good information on TV and some good programs, but that's the exception to the rule. There's a whole lot of fluff and just nonsense also. All right. Let me get some more of your questions in here. Angela Williams said, you said that psychology is the foundation of power. Okay, we have Miguel, Jalea, Scott said, I believe the slave shows are designed to scare and introduce the new generation to a system of terrorism using the past to control us. Yeah, I agree with that also. And it's designed to keep us in the slave mentality. It's designed to lock us into the 1619 myth that our history started in this country, August 20th, 1619. Most of our people don't know that we were here tens of thousands of years before that happened, and we were here before Native Americans came into existence. Markeisha, hey, Markeisha, how you doing? Hey, Markeisha, I sent you an email today. The order that you tried to place with us did not go through. You didn't complete the order. So check your email, check your spam mail, because I sent you an email letting you know how to complete your order. Okay, you just didn't complete it. That's all. Markeisha said, I've learned so much, encouraging everyone to register. Thank you. All right. And Misha said the slideshow with the gnosis on it had an F word at the bottom. Okay, let me back up. Okay, so I deal with this in the course. The F word at the bottom, that's frigatriskaidekaphobia. Frigatriskaidekaphobia, right? Frigatriskaidekaphobia is the fear of Friday the 13th. The fear of Friday the 13th. The prefix friga, you see friga, Freya, Freya. Freya or Frigga was the wife to Odin. Odin, who was the father of Thor, okay, and Odin with the patch. Odin, who was a deity, a god in Scandinavian mythology, okay? When you study the origins of the days of the week, and we deal with this in the course because this ties into history. When you study the origins of the days of the week, they go back to Scandinavian mythology. Thursday used to be called Thor's Day, named after Thor, the god of thunder, who was a copy of the Orisha Shango, who is the god of thunder or the deity of thunder, in Ifa, which is the Yoruba spiritual system. The Yoruba spiritual system. Okay. Frigga was the wife, or Freya was the wife to Odin. So Friday is, when you study the etymology of the word Friday, it goes back to Freya, Frigga. Different European languages, you have different variations of her name, but that's what that is. Frigga triskaidekaphobia is the fear of Friday the 13th, and that ties partly into the Knights Templar, who are founded in 1118 AD during the Second Crusades, who are known as the Poor Knights of Christ, who get information from the Africans known as the Moors, who take this knowledge from ancient Kemet into Europe. Okay. And the Knights Templar become very powerful. And when they're disbanded, either 1310 or 1314, it was a Friday, October 13th. It was said to be the day that the knowledge stopped. So this is one of the reasons why Friday the 13th is a day that people fear, because that was said the day to be that was said to be the day that the knowledge stopped. So when they're disbanded, those teachings went underground. And those teachings resurfaced as the Scottish rites of the Freemasons, because we deal with Freemasonry in the course, not mysticism. We deal with we deal with some real history of Freemasonry. Okay, so those teachings resurfaced as the Scottish rites of the Freemasons, and also the Rosicrucians and other secret societies, or societies with secrets. Okay, and then we deal with how those teachings come here to the U.S., because 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. And Freemasonry is based upon ancient African principles coming out of ancient Kemet, out of ancient Egypt. Okay, so Frigga triskaidekaphobia, that's what that is. All right, now this is Dr. David Imhotep. Okay, and just a second, let me post the link here for the, how's everybody doing? Okay, Crowdcast, how's everybody doing? Tamika, how you doing, Tamika? Let me post the link here once again for those. Now, those watching on Facebook who is actually registered for this 8-hour course. It's an 8-hour plus course. You're going to get more than 8 hours. Who's registered for this 8-hour course? We just posted a link again. It's only $40 for the entire course. Once you register, you'll be able to watch the first 4 hours, because we just had a class last night. You'll be able to watch the first 4 hours. So that way, when class meets next Thursday, April 27th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you'll be all caught up and you'll come to class with questions. And all these sessions are recorded. You can watch them over and over and over again. Okay. So we just posted a link there. You can go ahead and register. This information is going to blow you away. Seriously. You will not be the same after you watch this course, after you go through this course. All right. Now, okay. So let's continue here. Oh, and then also, we have another one. We have one starting up tomorrow, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. So once you register for the one, on Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, at the top of the page, just click on courses. It'll show the other courses we have. You can register for the one for Great African Women. We're going to do a quick overview of that also during this session. That one is only $20. That's about a 6-hour course. That's only $20. And that's all recorded also. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. All right, now this is Dr. David Imhotep. Dr. David Imhotep wrote a groundbreaking book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, came out in 2011. He's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him about 10 times now. And he holds the world's first ever PhD in ancient African history. His website is historictruth.info. Historictruth.info. Okay. And his book deals with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. And in South America, going back at least 56,000 years, okay? Thoroughly documented. I'm not talking about something based upon a bone found here or there. I'm not talking about hocus pocus or just a bunch of nonsense. No, I'm talking about thoroughly documented archaeological evidence, okay? So let's see here. On page 14 of his book, he talks about a discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear. Dr. Albert Goodyear. Here's his book here. Dr. Albert Goodyear, who is a archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. Okay, University of South Carolina. He's an archaeologist in Allendale County, South Carolina. This is what they found in 2004. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics. They found linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found overwhelming evidence of an African presence in this country that we call the United States of America. His book has 713 footnotes, okay? Now, there was an article from ScienceDaily.com in November 18th, 2004. Now, this is a scientific journal, ScienceDaily.com. You can go check this article out yourself. It's called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago. New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 years ago. And what this article talks about is the discovery that Dr. Albert Goodyear made. Okay. Now on Facebook, Dino S. Hall said, what was that website again? Are you referring to Dr. David Imhotep's website? Which website are you referring to, Dino? Let me know. Okay. Which website are you referring to? All right. Now, and it says very briefly here, this is a synopsis of the article. You could read it for yourself. Don't have to take my word for it. There's proper documentation, ends all conversation. Radiocarbon tests of plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age, okay? This is before Native Americans came into existence. Only people on Earth were African people at this time. And when you read Dr. David Imhotep's book, and we have some information from him in the course, these were African people. These were the Khoisan. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. They are the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They come from Southern Africa. When the Genome Project went around the world and took DNA samples from 100,000 people, they found that the Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet, and the Khoisan were here. You also have a presence of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt here as well, and Africans were making voyages from here back and forth to the continent of Africa as well. You have pyramid mounds that were built up and down the Mississippi River. Okay, there's an overwhelming African presence here. So once again, the slave movies perpetuate the 1619 myth. They perpetuate the myth that our history started in this country August 20th, 1619. Okay, and let me see. You wanted Dr. David Imhotep's website. We'll post this here. It's historictruth.info. Historictruth.info. Okay. It's historictruth.info. All right. Okay. So this is why, and I go deep into this, the problem with slave movies. This is why. It's not saying slavery didn't happen, not saying we shouldn't tell that story. But in these various slave movies and slave TV shows, they never talk about the African presence in this country that existed for tens of thousands of years prior to slavery taking place. And that's a problem. All right. Now, February 10th, 2000, this is 2010, February 15th, 2010. New York Times has an article. And I found out about this article from Dr. David Imhotep. And I went through and read it, and we deal with some different articles here in the first session. We deal with some articles that are outside the circumference of most people's awareness. And the reason why is because I'm laying a historical foundation so we can properly deal with the transatlantic slave trade, number one. Number two, the more research they do, the older we get. And the deeper they dig, the blacker the planet gets. Okay. Now, this is an article not from Infowars.com. not from sodahead.com. No, this is from New York Times. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. This is from 7 years ago. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. Now, Crete is an island in the Mediterranean, okay, a Greek island in the Mediterranean. Here's a synopsis of what this article said. It talked about how over 2 summers, archaeologists were excavating the Greek island of Crete, and they found stone tools that date back at least 130,000 years ago. And they said this is considered strong evidence for the earliest known seafaring in the Mediterranean and calls for rethinking the maritime capabilities of pre-human cultures. Well, this is causing them to have to rethink everything and push dates back. They said Crete has been an island for more than 5 million years, meaning that the tool makers must have arrived by boat. So this seems to push the history of Mediterranean voyaging back more than 100,000 years. Okay, they said that they thought that maritime sailing and sailing to the Greek island of Crete and Sardinia was no earlier than 10,000 or 12,000 years ago. This discovery right here is causing them to have to rethink everything, because then this causes you have to push dates back. So some of our scholars like Runoko Rashidi and Dr. Charles Finch, they've been saying for years, hey, Nita Sunshine, how you doing, Nita? How you doing, Nita? They've been saying for years that Homo sapiens sapiens are not 75,000 or 100,000 years old. They're 300,000 years old. They've been saying for years, Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Charles Finch, and others, they've been saying that Homo sapiens sapiens are not 75,000 to 100,000 years old. They are 300,000 years old at least. Okay, so we know there's at least 130,000 years of our history that's missing. Okay, read this article here. We get into this in the course. All right. And this is Dr. Leonard Jeffries. He's one of my teachers. Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, when they teach, they talk about the pyramid principle, right? And the foundation of the pyramid, so we know a pyramid has 3 sides. This is one of the great pyramids of Giza. This is the pyramid of Khafre. We know a pyramid has 3 sides. The foundation of the pyramid is African history and culture. African history and culture. It gives you your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. It gives you your cultural framework that you see reality through. Our history and culture has been taken away from us. We've been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans. Your history and culture influences the 2 sides of the pyramid: economic empowerment and political empowerment. If you do not have that foundation and base in place, that foundation is not in place, it does not matter how much money you have, you won't know what to do with the money. You will not be able to control your economics until you have control over your mind. Okay? So right now, African people in this country, and also in the course, we deal with the term African American, because Jesse Jackson did not create the term African American in 1989, 88. No, he did. Jesse Jackson introduced the term African American. We deal with the origin of the term America, because it was not named after Amerigo Vespucci. And we also deal with the original meaning of the term American and all that stuff, because it all deals with African people. All right, this is what we don't understand. It all deals with African people. And we deal with the origin of the term Africa, because Africa was not named after a Roman general named Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus. We need to stop talking. We need to stop spreading that nonsense. That's not true at all. It's not true historically or etymologically. And we deal with that. I'll break that down historically and etymologically. That is not true at all. Okay. We have a gross domestic product of $1.3 trillion. 97% of our dollars are spent with people that don't look like us, because that foundation is not in place. Every ethnic group in America, for the most part, they have their history and culture intact, and they use it to fight for scarce wealth, power, and resources. They use it to fight for scarce wealth, power, and resources. Their goal is not integration. And I've studied the civil rights movement. I just dealt with it Thursday on Steve Hood's show. We dealt with the letter from a Birmingham jail, April 16th, 1963. Dr. King wrote a 7,000-word letter in response to 8 white clergymen in Birmingham, Alabama, who said that his involvement in the Birmingham campaign was untimely and unwise, things like this. We dealt with the Albany movement of 1961 and 1962 in Albany, Georgia, that led to Dr. King getting involved in the Birmingham movement in 1963, because Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth called him and said, if you come and help us in Birmingham in segregation, I can guarantee you a victory. Okay. The goal of the civil rights movement was not integration. The goal was desegregation. There's a difference. There's a big difference. Professor James Small talks about this. The goal was desegregation. Oftentimes what we got was integration, but that's not what we fought for. If you don't control your economics, you will never be able to control the politics in your community. Okay, so we have to have a synthesis of all this. Unfortunately, so many of our people who get involved in African history and culture, so many of us are trying to metaphysically transport ourselves back to 3000 BC, so we don't have to deal with the conditions today and don't have to provide strategies and solutions to meet the needs and solve the problems today. Your history and culture is supposed to help you to meet the needs and solve the problems of your community today and in the future, not to become escapism so you don't have to deal with the problems today. Because see, a lot of people in the so-called conscious community are using African history and culture the same way some Christians are using Christianity. Some Christians are using Christianity to escape the realities of the day because they're focused on going to heaven. So they're so heavenly bound and no earthly good. So you have some people in the so-called conscious community, because to me, the conscious community doesn't even exist. But you have some people in the so-called conscious community who are so focused on African history and culture, they're trying to metaphysically transport themselves back to 3000 BC in ancient Kemet and not deal with the conditions that exist today. And that's not the purpose of history and culture. It's supposed to help you meet the needs and solve the problems of your people today and in the future. Okay. All right. Okay. So some of the things we deal with is how we are at war. We've been at war for at least 500 years, They use 1492 as a marker. The war is not against white people. The war is against white supremacy and racism. The war is against white supremacy and racism. And the war never ended. It just changed its form. It didn't end with the end of the Civil War in June of 1865. It didn't end with the 13th Amendment ratified December 6, 1865. It didn't end with the adoption of the 13th Amendment December 18th, 1865. It intensified December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee, when the Ku Klux Klan was founded. Okay. It's going to intensify with the black codes that go into effect in southern states in 1865. And then you have the sharecropping system and the convict leasing system. Convict leasing system exists from 1865 to 1928. And the sharecropping system and the convict leasing system we're getting locked into because of black codes, because there's an attempt to regulate the movement of the formerly enslaved African people, the formerly 4 million enslaved African people. And they're trying to figure out where's the labor force coming from, because we just turned loose these slaves because the South lost the Civil War. And so they come up with African people having to sign labor contracts at the beginning of the year and lock them back into slave plantations they were just freed from to till the soil and plant the crops, things like this. So the sharecropping system is created. So they're using the sharecropping system and the convict leasing system to exploit our labor and lock us back into these labor positions. Right. And then they're using the labor unions, which we see created a lot of large labor unions, like in 1866, national labor unions created to protect jobs for white men that African people have been doing for the last few hundred years, largely for free. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. And our skills were as good as, or many times better than, white men. So now that we're free and can compete for these jobs, now these labor unions start popping up to protect these jobs for white men. So they're using the convict leasing system and the sharecropping system to lock us into these low-paying agricultural jobs and exploit our labor. And they're using the labor unions to lock us out of skilled trade jobs that we were doing for hundreds of years for free. This is one of the biggest affirmative action programs in this country for white people. It wasn't just 246 years of slavery, which is affirmative action for white people. It was the creation of labor unions, the convict leasing system, and the sharecropping system also. So we see the war against African people intensifying. Before we deal with the war on drugs in 1982, declared by Ronald Reagan, we have to deal with the war on drugs declared June 17th, 1971 by Richard Nixon, when he lied in front of Congress to get funding for the war on drugs. Now you have a ramping up of the war on drugs again, after it was winding down under President Obama. A lot of people don't know the U.S. prison population right now is the lowest it's been since 1997. It's down to 1.53 million. It's the lowest it's been. Under President Obama, the prison population, U.S. prison population was declining because President Obama instructed his Department of Justice to back off of prosecuting low-level drug offenses, things like this. Now, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, white supremacist segregationist Klan sympathizer out of Alabama, he and his Department of Justice under Donald Trump, they're pushing for mandatory minimums. They're ramping up the war on drugs. They're talking about how crime is out of control in the U.S. No, it's not. Violent crime is at an almost 40, 42, 45-year low. We know nationwide murders are at a 45-year low. This is documented. We've seen upticks in Baltimore and Chicago, things like this, but nationwide, no, it's not. No, they are ramping up a war on drugs all over again, based upon lies. This is on purpose. And if you go study Core Civic and Geo Group, Core Civic is the largest owner-operator privatized prisons in the country. They used to be called Corrections Corporation of America. Core Civic and Geo Group, which used to be called Wackenhut, they donated almost $600,000 to Donald Trump's campaign. These are two publicly traded stocks. Stock exchange symbol for Core Civic is CWX. Go look it up. CWX, Core Civic. The stock price of Core Civic has increased about 148% since November 8th. Stock price of Geo Group has increased about 98%. See, we should have seen this coming if we looked at their policies as opposed to getting caught up on personality. If we looked at the policies they were proposing, we would have seen this coming. Dr. Edward Robinson talks about how we need to understand our African ancestors who were enslaved, not as slaves, but as prisoners of war. Because he said there were wars going on between Africans and Europeans that they were fighting against, and they got caught up in these wars. When you understand our ancestors as prisoners of war, and you study history, you see that the war never ended. The war continues. The war never ended. So these are some of the things that we deal with in the course here, okay? We also deal with the 800-year occupation of the Africans known as the Moors. You cannot, see, I deal with this chronologically because I study different periods of time in history. And some people deal with the transatlantic slave trade episodically as an episode in history, okay? You can't do that. You can't understand properly the transatlantic slave trade till you understand the previous 800 years of history and the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, what the Moors introduced in Europe, but also the tensions that developed between Europeans and the Moors. Because a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that when the Portuguese go into, when Prince Henry the Navigator is sending ships around the west coast of Africa in 1419. And then about 1441, they start picking up African slaves, taking them back to Lisbon, Portugal. A lot of people are under the impression this was the first time Europeans came in contact with African people. No, it's not. No, it's not. You have millions of Africans all throughout Europe, known as the Moors. And they're intermixing with the population. This is why in Sicily and Crete, and also in Spain, Italy, this is why they had darker complexions, the Europeans, because Moors were intermixing in those populations. So to understand how we got in this predicament, we have to understand January 2nd, 1492, when the Moors lose control of their last stronghold, Grenada, in Spain. And then we also have to understand some of those events that took place as well, and what the Moors introduced into Europe. Not just nautical instruments, not just the science, not just what they call alchemy, which today we call chemistry. But the Moor science texts are going to form the basis of a lot of your early European universities, University of Barcelona, University of Cordoba, University of Toledo, things like this. They were set up to study the Moor science texts, the teachings that the Moors introduced into Europe. So we deal with all this history in the course and a lot more. Now, the Moors, once again, are taking into Europe the teachings from the ancient Kemetic mystery system, the ancient Egyptian mystery system. And we know they're going to teach Europeans when they go in 8th century AD. 85 to 90% of Europeans are illiterate. You had kings and queens who could neither read nor write. The priests were said to be the most literate people, and you're going to have the priests to start translating these Moorish texts into Spanish, okay, and you're going to have these teachings when the Knights Templar disband. These teachings are going to resurface. Scottish Rite to the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, things like this. These teachings are going to come to the U.S., the British colonies, with the so-called founding fathers, or as Dr. Francis Cress Wilson called them, the foundling fathers. So this is how you get something like this. So the Tekken, which the Greeks call an obelisk, is an ancient African symbol. And there were about 1,200 Tekkenu in ancient Kemet. So on the left, we see in ancient Kemet a Tekkenu, okay? And then on the right, we see the Washington Monument and the monument of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's a Tekken because Freemasonry is based upon ancient African principles. So this comes from the story of Asar, Arset, and Herut. Asar, Arset, and Herut, known as the First Holy Trinity. Now, what I say may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, don't like it, does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. And in the story of Asar, Arset, and Herut, you have Arset the virgin who gives birth to Herut on December 25th. It's a virgin birth. Okay. And when you look at the constellation of Virgo in the sky from Western civilization, the constellation of Virgo, Virgo is Latin for virgin. That constellation was originally of Arset. We see a hijacking of our culture with DC Comics, and the Secrets of Isis TV show used to come on in the 70s. So Saturday mornings, I used to get up and watch the Shazam and Isis hour. It used to come on, I think, 11 a.m. Shazam and Isis hour. And they showed this white woman who they said got her powers from ancient Egypt. And her name was Isis. We didn't know she was a copy of Arset, who in the mythology was the first queen in ancient Kemet. And they're taking the horns of Heru, the sun disk. They're taking symbolism from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and attributing them to this white woman. But from Arset and Heru, okay, Heru, born of a virgin birth on December 25th, has 12 disciples. From Arset, we get the Black Madonna and Child, which was worshipped all throughout Europe prior to the rise of white supremacy. You have statues of the Black Madonna and Child in Poland and Russia and Czechoslovakia, France, Italy, all throughout Europe, prior to the rise of white supremacy, prior to Europeans coming out of the Dark Ages in the 15th century. And as Europeans are coming out of the Dark Ages, conquering people's land, rebuilding Europe, you're going to see a rise in the European phenotype and value associated to the European phenotype. So you go from the Black Madonna and Child to the Virgin Mary and Jesus, a decolorization. And they're going to start to co-opt other people's images and reinterpret them as European, because they're trying to reconcile with all these exceptions to white supremacy. They're trying to reconcile with all these exceptions to white supremacy. Okay? All right. So we talk about the film Out of Darkness. Film Out of Darkness from director Amadeus Christ is available at our website. And we lay a good historical foundation so we can get into the transatlantic slave trade. Okay. And Professor Kaba talks about Shenkat Diop and understanding values, interests, and principles. We deal with the origins of the word America. We get into some deep information. Now, we deal with the origins of the word America, the origins of the word Africa. Africa was not named after Blaise Cornelius Scipio Africanus. His family's surname was not even Africanus, it was Scipio, okay? Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, he told us that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed, okay, Stephen Biko. So we deal with the problem with slave movies and we deal with the Roots Reimagined as well, okay? And nowhere in Roots, even though they did a lot of research and went to the Senegambia region of West Africa, did a lot of research on the Mandinka, things like this, nowhere in Roots or any of the interviews they did leading up to Roots Reimagined did they talk about African people being here in this land called the United States of America tens of thousands of years before the transatlantic slave trade starts. There were more African people who were already here than were brought here during the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, this is a huge problem, because if you think that your history started in this country, shackled in chains and conquered by Europeans, you are off to a terrible start, because you're already psychologically damaged, because you see your history in this country starting conquered and put into a position of being a piece of property and subhuman. And as Dr. Leonard Jeffrey says, whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, self-development, and self-worth. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. Okay, so we deal with this. Now, this is two national flags: national flag of Corsica and national flag of Sardinia. National flag of Corsica, national flag of Sardinia. These are two islands in the Mediterranean. To this day, they have African Moors heads on their national flags. To this day, they have African Moors heads on their national flags. Because the Moors were in those areas, it was a monumental effort to defeat them. Okay. And they have them on their national flag. Notice these Moors are not white. They're black, they're African, because the Moors were predominantly African people. Okay, so the history of the Moors in Europe, we see artifacts, we see paintings, we see history. They're in the history books. We see them in literature, like in Othello, the play by Shakespeare, by the African Moor, right? Othello. We see it in the heraldry or the coat of arms that different European families had, showing their ancestry. And they would have shields with like different European names, surnames, things like this, showing their ancestry. And a lot of those coat of arms, somewhere on there, sometimes at the top, they would have an African Moor's head, because that was an ancestor of theirs. We also see it in Europeans' bloodlines. And we see it in the words in different languages as well. Okay, like Maurice, because the Romans referred to the Moors as Mauri, M-A-U-R-I, Mauri, or Maurish, M-A-U-R-I-S-H. And Maurice, M-A-U-R-I-C-E, is a derivation of Mauri. Okay, so this is undeniable history. All right, so we deal with the Moors, a lot of this information. We deal with Christopher Columbus. Something very important we deal with Columbus is where Columbus went on his 4 voyages. Because we have to stop lying to our children and teaching them that Columbus came to America. Because when you study Columbus and his 4 voyages, Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. When you study Columbus and his 4 voyages, Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. Okay. Now, those watching on Facebook, how's everybody doing? Hey, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. I'm the founder and owner of this Facebook page that we're on, the African History Network. We have 970,000 followers here. This is a free preview. How you doing, Rolanda? This is a free preview of a 8-hour plus online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We just posted the information here with the link. We posted again, so you can register for the full 8-hour course. It's only $40 for the full course. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch the first 4 hours of the course that's been recorded, and all these sessions are recorded. Next session meets this Thursday, April 27th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have three more sessions, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the next 3 Thursdays. And so you'll be all caught up and ready for this Thursday's class. And you can come with questions written down. You can ask questions during the course also. It's an online course. You can ask questions during the chat. Who watching has registered for the course? Okay, we just posted a link because I know some people wanted to register tonight. Who watching on Facebook has registered for the course. And let me get to some of your questions. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to do a preview of a course we have starting up tomorrow, Saturday, April 22nd. Well, the day is Saturday now. April 22nd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Okay. Aman Rahim, how you doing? Shirley J. Carter. How you doing, Shirley? Learned about the influence of the Moors and languages from Ivan Van Sertima. Mike Webster, the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Morgan Freeman's character was called a Moor. Yeah, I think his name was the Moor. I'm not sure if he even had a name in there. Okay. Who's registered for the Thursday class for Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school? We just posted a link. You can go ahead and register. This is for the Thursday class. Brandon, how you doing, Brandon? Okay, let me try to get to some of your questions here. Skeet Taylor, Dr. Anthony T. Browder talked about this. Vernon Thomas, they only point out who they plan to attack by public deception. So when they attack, they already set a false narrative in the public mind, so they have less people to question their actions. Sounds like he's dealing with the propaganda of the media. Glenda Lobby said they failed to mention white on white crimes. Yeah, the term black on black crime was created back in about the 1980s by the media. You kill where you live. So about 84% of white people who killed are killed by other white people. 89% of African Americans who are killed by other African Americans. You kill where you live. All right. Let's see here. Okay, hello. All right. Shirley, Monty Powell, lots of blacks don't want to know this. Yeah, you have some of our people want to know, you have some people don't know. It's what you don't know that hurts you. And some people are not going to get it this lifetime. Some people are just not going to get it this lifetime. Some people are going to die ignorant. And that's just the bottom line. Harriet Tubman said it best. She said, I freed 1,000 slaves, but I could have freed 1,000 more if they had only known that they were slaves. I could have freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if they had only known that they were slaves. Okay. So this is extremely, extremely important. All right. We have to, Professor Kaba talks about how he said, I'm only looking for 3 out of 100. He said, I'm only looking for 3 out of 100. He said, because the other 97 are not ready for this type of information. So we have 45 million African Americans in this country right now, about 45 million. 3 out of 100, somewhere I think around 1.5 million. You get 1.5 million. That's extremely powerful. So we oftentimes we get too caught up in the people who don't want the information and overlook the people who do want the information. Focus on the people who want the information and want to do something. as opposed to people who don't want to do something. Okay. Um, let's see here. Something else that we deal with in the course. Then I'm going to transition into great African women in history, the mothers of civilization. Something else we deal with. Another example. Hannibal Barca, okay, in the Battle of Cannae 216 BC. And this, the History Channel dealt with this last year, June of last year, in a series called Barbarians Rising. And they had a black British actor named Nicholas Pinnock, a man of African descent, playing Hannibal, because Hannibal was an African man, okay? After the rise of white supremacy, Europeans changed the image of Hannibal into a European. Prior to that, he was depicted as an African person. But the Carthaginians are descendants of the Phoenicians, who are descendants of the Garamantes. These are black African people. Okay. So we deal with this also. We deal with why European white supremacy is like the Wizard of Oz. White supremacy is a false concept that has real consequences or repercussions. Go through, explain what the transatlantic slave trade was, etc. The Portuguese dominate the first 200 years of the slave trade because they get involved in 1440s, going back to about 1440, 1441. They dominate for the first 200 years. The Spanish are quickly behind them, okay? So these are some of the things we deal with. And we also deal with the slave trading companies. We deal with the role of insurance companies as well. Because when people want to talk about Africans' involvement in the slave trade, they say, oh, you all sold your people into slavery. We say, wait a second, who owned the slave ships that were transporting Africans around the world? Who owned the insurance companies that took out insurance policies on the African slaves? Who owned the slave trading companies that were financed by people with wealth and power to finance these expeditions? Okay. Who owned the companies that made the chains and the shackles, things like this? Okay. Who forced who to build the slave dungeons that were used to hold the Africans along the west coast of Africa? Who had the Asiento of 1513, 1517? Okay, so when you actually understand this history, those weak arguments fall apart. All right. Okay. And then we deal with Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. because Dr. Gates wrote an article dealing with back in 2010. He wrote an article called "Ending the Slavery Blame Game." Ending the Slavery Blame Game, and we deal with that, and we deal with how he takes. What Gates does is he takes exceptions to the rule dealing with the African involvement in the slave trade, and he tries to make that the rule to absolve Europeans of responsibility for paying reparations. Okay. All right. So once again, that's an overview of our course. It's an 8-hour plus course, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We could register for it now. Michael, can you tell us how to register for your class? And Mr. Okay, Anita, yeah, let me post it. Okay, so once again, and now we have it also in the description of this broadcast on Facebook. But here it is again. We just posted. It says register here. Click on that link. It says register here. Click on that link. You can register there for it. It's an 8-hour plus course. It's only $40. All the sessions are recorded. Meets each Thursday. Meets for the next 3 Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As soon as you register, you'll be able to watch the first 4 hours that we have recorded. And then that'll get you caught up and you'll be ready this Thursday for class, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you miss any of the course, it's fine. All sessions are recorded. You can go back, watch it anytime, watch it over and over again. And you can ask questions. So this Thursday for class, you should probably have some questions that from the first 4 hours that you have watched. We have the information there. Okay. I don't think they had last names back then. Monty Powell, Hannibal Barca. Yeah, Hannibal Barca. Hannibal Barca. B-A-R-C-A. Hannibal Barca. Okay. Yeah, they had last names. Let me go back and catch some of your questions here. And then let me go to this next one here. We're gonna do about a 30-minute preview of this other presentation. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. This online course starts up Saturday, April 22nd, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, it's recorded also. If you miss any of it, not a problem. So I'll record it. Go back and watch it again. Okay, let me get some of your questions here on Facebook. All right. Ava said, I've learned so much in this last hour and a half than I have in school. Okay. Now, did you register for the course for Thursday, Ava? You registered for the course. Skeet Taylor, how you doing, Skeet? Anita. Okay, so we posted so did you get the information that we just posted, Anita Williams? Did you get it? Brian Haywood, fact is fact. Unfortunately, a lot of our people get comfortable in the lie, go along to get along. Yeah, that's true. That's true, Brian. But we have to focus on the people who want to learn. I do radio here in Detroit. I do national radio also. And what happens is radio is such a powerful medium because after people hear things over and over again and they hear different information, even I just spoke at a church. Let me give you an example. I just spoke at a church here, a prominent African American church here in Detroit. Is Plymouth United Church, okay? And Steve Hood hooked it up for me. Steve Hood, I do his radio show every Thursday morning, and he said that he said you have no idea. When I spoke there, after I spoke, man, people were just blown away by the presentation. The presentation I did was called "The Light of Ancient Egypt Awakens the African Mind," while we celebrate African American History Month. The light of ancient Egypt awakens the African mind while we celebrate African American History Month. And he basically said, you have no idea the impact that you've had on the people here in this presentation. Because some of the people who didn't want to learn anything about our history, they came up to my table afterwards and said, okay, where should I start? They wanted to get a DVD. They said, where should I start? All right. He said, that just blew him away to see that. Okay. So somebody asked a question, why isn't Black history, let me get this question. Okay. So your brother said, why isn't Black history taught in school to our youth and only offered when one reaches college level? Okay. There's a few reasons. Number one, some of the school systems don't want this information taught. Number one. Number two, the parents haven't demanded that it be taught. The parents have to demand this stuff. Okay. And the parents can take resources to the school to have incorporated into the course. Okay. Incorporated into American history, things like this. So the parents have to demand that this type of information be taught in school. Some good resources you can utilize are blackpast.org, blackpast.org. Also AtlantaBlackStar.com. They have a lot of good articles dealing with history, things like this, AtlantaBlackStar.com. But the parents have to demand that this type of information be taught. And a lot of times some of the teachers don't have a background in this type of history, so they can't teach it because they were never taught it themselves. Okay. Reggie Burrow said it's scary, all the things we didn't learn in school. Absolutely. Well, powerful people never teach you how to take their power away from them. Okay. You have to take it yourself. But the parents have to demand that this type of information be taught in school. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do a overview of my presentation, of the online course, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Your brother said, can you post those here? Is it possible to just purchase a DVD? I'm working during the time. Okay, well, Brian, the whole course is recorded, so you can watch it anytime. You can watch it 3 o'clock in the morning. I think it was Brian who asked that question. So I do have this subject on DVD. The course is more in depth. So our website is AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll post our website here. You can explore our website also. You can order DVDs from our website, of course, but the online course that I'm doing is more in depth. Okay. And the sessions are recorded. You can watch them anytime, whenever your schedule permits. Okay. So you don't have to worry about that. Let me, we'll post the website here also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Our current promotion, spend $100 or more, get 20% off your entire order of DVDs at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Use promo code March 2017 promo, March 2017 promo. Seen a police basketball event, but let the kids run wild to their homes. Okay. I've been studying Kemetic for some time now. My ex-fiance couldn't let go of Christian and religious tradition, Terry said. That happens. That happens. I had an ex-girlfriend who broke up with me over that issue, basically, so I know how it is. That happens. It's best to get into a relationship with somebody who's pretty much on the same plane as you are in regards to that, because if you don't, it could cause problems. Monty says, so Egypt is exactly who and what we are. Well, many of our ancestors came from ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet. And we know that in the Nile Valley region, we know they're going to migrate into Central Africa, into West Africa. So the Dogon and the Yoruba, they come from ancient Kemet. They're going to migrate from ancient Kemet. We know the Dogon leave ancient Kemet around 400 BC. They're going to migrate into Burkina Faso and Mali. There were invading forces coming. They're going to migrate there. So African people were not stationary. African people were not stationary. And there you see links in various African languages in West Africa and Central Africa, going back to ancient Kemet as well. And then we see the Moors, who are in North Africa, Northwest Africa, and they're going into Europe. They're taking the teachings from ancient Kemet as well. So African people were not stationary. Okay, so let's get to this other one here. Let me set up the screen share again. This is another course I'm teaching, online course I'm teaching. This one starts up Saturday, April 22nd, Saturday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, Great African. Okay, this is the wrong one. Just a second here. We're doing Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Where is that? Just a minute here. Let me bring this up. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. One of the women we talk about is Henrietta Lacks. And on HBO, Oprah Winfrey has the movie about Henrietta Lacks today. Okay, I'm going to check that out also. That's one of the women we talk about. Let me bring this up here. We'll be here for about another half hour. Okay. Just a second here. Let me bring this up. All right. Hold on. Okay. Any other questions on Facebook? Go ahead and post them. Let's see here. What is this? Okay, Skeet Taylor said you can't teach what you don't know. That's true. Monty Powell said, how can the parents demand it when they've been Christianized? Well, even in even parents who are Christians, a lot of them still study our history, things like that. I've talked to some of them. So just because they're Christianized doesn't mean that they don't want our history taught. That doesn't mean that. Okay, so this other course that I'm teaching, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Okay, and we have this course on. I did a DVD presentation. I just did one in February. Okay, this is the old cover, but when you order it, you can order the DVD from our website. It's 4 hours. I just did this February 2017. So you can order that from AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. You'll get the new version, the one I just did February 2017. But this course is kind of more in depth than the actual DVD presentation as well. Okay. All right. So, yeah, Nicki Minaj, I deal with, in one of these courses, I break down the lyrics to her song, Anaconda, okay? Because we have to be aware of the music that our children are listening to and understand the lyrics so we can have these conversations with them, okay? But in 2005, a young African-American girl named Carrie Davis did a documentary. It was a 7-minute documentary for school. She was in high school. It was called A Girl Like Me, A Girl Like Me. And in this documentary, what she did was she interviewed some of her African-American classmates, female classmates, to find out how they felt about themselves, their body types, their appearance, etc., based upon the images they saw themselves in the media, okay? And the results were shocking. And we really have to be cognizant of the impact that the media has on our children, okay, and how it damages their self-esteem as well. She also dealt with the Black Doll, White Doll test, okay. Dr. Kenneth Clark and his wife, Dr. Mamie Clark, did back in 1939, and she recreated that as well, okay. And documentaries like this show why we have to teach our children about their history. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results, but also to gain control of the images of ourselves in the media, okay? And these are some of the things we deal with in this presentation, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization, okay? And we talk about women like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who made the transition January 2nd, 2016. She's a former professor at Howard University. We know she wrote the book, The ISIS Papers, Keys to the Color. We deal with Dink Nesh, okay, who Europeans call Lucy. All right, now, Dink Nesh was of the species Australopithecus afarensis. And she dates back about 3.2 million years ago, okay? Now, when her remains were discovered in 1974, these were not remains of all of one person. These were different bones from the same species, okay? Australopithecus afarensis. The Europeans who discovered the remains, they were listening to the song about the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And so they called her Lucy, but Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, one of our great African Center Scholar warriors who was an Egyptologist, Dr. Ben said that she's an African woman, she must have an African name. So he named her Dink Nesh, which is Amharic, which means you are amazing, okay? It's Amharic, the ancient language of the Ethiopians. You are amazing. We talk about Auset as well, who was in the mythology, in the story, first queen of ancient Kemet, wife of Asar, who the Greeks call Horus. The term Ka rest, Ka meaning spirit, rest meaning to rise. Ka rest is where the word Christos, the Greek word Christos, comes from, and the English word Christ, okay, meaning anointed. This is where this comes from. And Heru was known as the Ka rest, okay? And in the mythology, we know that Auset resurrects the body of her husband Asar, who's cut up into 14 pieces, and she recovers 13 of the pieces. The 14th piece, the phallus or the penis, was not recovered. So you have the resurrection of the Tekken, which is a symbol of the phallus of Asar, which represents transformation and resurrection. Represents that. And 13, the number 13 is symbolic also, because the number 13 is a symbol of transformation and resurrection as well. Okay, now Aset means she of throne, and Aset was associated with fertility. She was a deity associated with love and fertility. You're going to see when the Greeks come in contact with the Africans, and then the Romans also, you're going to see copies of African Neteru or African deities in the Greek pantheon as well as Romans also. Okay, all right. We talk about Ma'at being the personification of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. Ma'at. Who was depicted as a winged deity, a winged goddess, who had in her headband an ostrich feather. And you see the scales of Ma'at in the famous judgment scene, the scales of Ma'at. And you'll see Anubis or Anpu, who's a jackal-headed deity weighing the scales, who had the ability of measurement and discernment and judgment, things like this. Okay, so we deal with all this, and we deal with the 42 negative confessions or admonitions of Ma'at, which were a precursor to the 10 Commandments. There's a precursor to the 10 Commandments. We deal with Amos Nefertari of the 19th dynasty, Amos Nefertari, or 18th dynasty, I should say, co-founded the 18th dynasty, Amos Nefertari, and her husband's the wife of well, she was an active participant along with her husband Nesubiti Amos in the final defeat of the shepherd kings, these invaders who come into Europe around 18th century BC, known as the Hyksos, the shepherd kings. Okay, so we deal with Amos Nefertari. You can see she was a Black African woman. The ancient Egyptians were not brown-skinned Europeans or Caucasians. These were Black African people. We deal with Queen T of the 18th dynasty. Also Queen T, mother of Amenhotep IV, Akhenaten, wife to Amenhotep III. We deal with people like this. We deal with the Greek mythology of Andromeda and Cassiopeia, who were two African women that the Greeks created constellations of, but they're later going to depict as Europeans, Andromeda and Cassiopeia. We talk about that in that mythology. We talk about Harriet Tubman, who escaped from slavery in 1849 and made about 20 trips to the slave plantations. She freed actually about 1,000 slaves because there was a raid that she led in the Civil War, which freed about 750 slaves. Okay. At one point, there was a bounty on her head of $40,000 in the 1850s. Okay. There was a bounty on her head. Okay. And she still persevered. So we deal with Harriet Tubman, who said, I freed 1,000 slaves and could have freed 1,000 more if they had only known there were slaves. Ida B. Wells. Now, Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman, Fannie Lou Hamer, these, I call them the original ride or die chicks, because these sisters were packing. They were packing heat. They were carrying guns. I call them the original ride or die chicks. Okay. And Ida B. Wells was Harriet Tubman before Harriet Tubman, because in Ohio, she refused to give up her seat on the streetcar. I think it was a streetcar. And she actually sued the streetcar system there in Ohio. She was a fighter against lynchings as well, because of the Moss store massacre, or Moss store murders in 1892. In Memphis, Tennessee. She gets involved in the anti-lynching movement as well. She was a co-founder of the NAACP. So we deal with this history of Ida B. Wells, a very, very interesting history. I mean, this sister was a newspaper owner. She was a newspaper writer and publisher. She was a journalist. She was at one point a probation officer. She was a school teacher. A fascinating, fascinating history. of Ida B. Wells, who also worked with Dr. W.B. Du Bois, not just in the NAACP, but also in the Afro-American Council, which was founded in 1898. Because the Afro-American Council, this was one of the early civil rights organizations, and they picked up the work from the National Afro-American League, which was founded in 1892. And the Afro-American, the term Afro-American was not created in the 1960s. The term Afro-American goes back to the 1830s. The term Afro-American goes back to the 1830s. Okay, and the term African-American, the earliest recorded usage of the term African-American goes back to May 15th, 1782 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Jesse Jackson did not create the term African-American. He reintroduced the term African-American. Okay, this is why we have to study this history. Sarah Rector. Now, this is a fascinating story, and we get deep into this history here in the course. Okay, once again, those who are just tuning in, this is we first did a preview of our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, so this next one, this is a overview of our online course. This is an overview of the online course, Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Okay, and we have this course starting up today, Saturday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, and this is a 6-hour course. It's over the next 3 Saturdays. Okay, and Sarah Rector at one point was the richest African American girl in the country. Okay, and she was referred to as Afro American, and she was of her parents. She was born on Creek Indian land, and she was her parents were born of enslaved Creek Indian ancestry. Okay, and we get into the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 and the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, because the Creek, in 1830, when because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians, they get pushed off their land in the southeastern United States. Indian Removal Act 1830 signed into law by President Andrew Jackson. And they get pushed out west. They go over 1,000 miles on what's known as the Trail of Tears, and they go into Oklahoma. And all 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, they also own black slaves. So they take the black slaves with them. The Creek Indians were one of them. And the Creek Indians, they're going to settle into an area that they call Tallahassee, okay, around 1836. Tallahassee becomes known as Tulsa. Tulsa, Oklahoma, where Black Wall Street was founded by Creek Indians around 1836, originally called Tallahassee. And when the Creek Indians go into Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears, they take their black slaves with them, because all 5 civilized tribes and Native Americans own black slaves as well. So we deal with all that history. We deal with the allotment, the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, the Dawes Rolls, the Dawes Allotment Act of 1887, which is supposed to reallocate 138 million acres of land to indigenous African people and Native Americans, but Europeans ended up getting 2/3 of that land also. Okay, all right. So those that are watching on Facebook, how's everybody doing? Those watching on Facebook, who needs me to post the link again so you can register for the course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Who needs me to post a link again, so you can register for that course. And then also we'll post a link for Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. Great African Women in History, the Mothers of Civilization. We'll post a link for that also. That Great African Women in History, that course is only $20. It's all recorded. Once again, go back and watch it over and over again as well. Here is the link for Great African Women in History. Click on that link. You can register there. There's the information there. And then also, okay, so Anita, did you register for the 8-hour course? Yes, for the link. Did you register for that course? The full 8-hour course. And let's see. Here's the information for understanding transatlantic slave trade here. Here's the link for that. With either one of them, once you register, like when you click on the link at the top of the page, if you click on courses, it'll show you all the courses we offer. Now, when you all register, if you want to register for the full 8-hour course, make sure you register for that, because registering for the free preview is different than the 8-hour course. You'll know, because the 8-hour course is $40, so you'll know. Okay. I was looking for your registration, Nita. Just make sure you did it correctly here. Okay. All right. And Anita, you registered for the 8-hour course? Okay. Maybe you're going to. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to make sure you did it correctly. Okay. Hey, Brandon. Thanks, man. Thanks. It's a lot of work. People don't know. Also, this Sunday, you know, I do my radio show every Sunday on 910 a.m. the Superstation. So we'll be on this Sunday live, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll deal with the letter from a Birmingham jail. We'll deal with the Birmingham movement as well to break down the walls of segregation. We'll also talk about Bill O'Reilly being ousted from Fox News. We'll talk about that some. And we'll talk about the African-American organization that was instrumental in putting pressure on advertisers of Bill O'Reilly's show to get them to drop pull their ads. That was colorchange.org. We'll talk about that as well. And we'll talk about Jeff Sessions, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and Jeff Sessions' attempt to ramp up the war on drugs. We'll deal with those three topics this Sunday, 9 p.m. 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Anita said, and we'll broadcast on Facebook Live. Anita said, I have to use a different computer because the link isn't accessible. Okay. Then also in the description here at the top, it has the link there as well. If you need me to post a link again, let me know. Okay, so let's go back to this here with, let me see something here. Let's go back to this here with Great African Women in History. All right, we'll be here for a few more minutes. How much? Okay. We'll be here on Crowdcast. We'll be here a couple more minutes. We'll be here for a few more minutes on Facebook Live. All right. So we have Henrietta Lacks, right? And Rebecca Skloot wrote the book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. I first found out about this in Hidden Colors 2 from Tony Browder. And I did research on Henrietta Lacks. Man, this is fascinating. So we go deep into this story in the class, okay? So Henrietta Lacks was a poor tobacco farmer, and in Virginia in 1951, she gets diagnosed with cervical cancer at 31 years old. She ends up dying from it a few months later, about 9 months later, something like that, okay? But when she was in the hospital at Johns Hopkins, they took a sample of her tumor, because at the time they were trying to grow cells in the lab, and they discovered that her cells never died and the cells multiplied. Okay, and they used her cells to develop vaccines from them, the polio vaccine, uh, uh, scientific landmarks, including cloning, gene mapping, in vitro fertilization. This is based upon partly the cells from Henrietta Lacks and the experiments they did on her cells. Okay, and to hide where her cells came from, they took the first two letters of her first and last name, so they referred to them as HeLa cells. Henrietta Lacks, HeLa cells. They in the medical industry, they've made billions of dollars off of this African woman's cells. They took her cells into outer space to see how they operated in zero